And we're live.
Hi, my name is Cowell, and today I'm going to show you how I'm going to paint my chimpanzee photograph. One of my students went into a gallery in London and saw a wildlife photographic exhibition, and she loved it so much she bought a postcard. And when she came and showed me, I immediately contacted the wildlife photographer, and after several attempts got through to him and got his permission to work from his photographs. And what I like about this photograph is the complexity of the hands, and also he looks as if he's brooding, as if he's really meditating. I'm going to be working on Frisk canvas boards. This is an 18-inch by 14-inch. They come in a pack of 4, and they're very, very good quality. I like the surface. Now, our first problem, obviously, is to get the image onto the canvas. Several ways you can do this. First of all, you can start off by sketching. The normal way that I do it is to find the center line, place the eyes, get the eyes down, and then work from there. And as you can see, just a little bit of quick sketching. Of course, you would measure, you would take your time to measure. But this is normally the way that I would do it, and get the mouth in. And then start looking at his hands. The big challenge will be to get the hands in, find where the ear is, etc., etc. But because it would take quite long to do it this way, the second option that I've got is actually to use tracing paper. And it's a very traditional way of transferring an image, is to use some tracing paper. You just merely put it down, trace off the big shapes, such as the eyes, such as the nose. Just place the main objects onto the paper, and then when you finish, you turn it over and you just put, I'm using a 4B pencil here, you put a bit of graphite on the back, and then you take your tracing, find exactly where you'd like it on your canvas, trace it off, and job done. There's an easier way to work, even more easy than that, and that is using trace down. And trace down is tracing paper that is wax-free, and you can use it on ceramics, you can use it on glass, you can use it on canvas, on watercolor, anything like that. And what is quite nice about this product is that you can actually erase it without smudging. So that's terrific. So what I'm going to do is just place the trace down on the canvas, and then using a harder pencil, probably a 2B, just go in and trace off the very, very big shapes, such as his ears, the eyes, of course, the nose, the mouth, and then get into drawing those hands and getting all the details of the hands down. Now, to speed up things, I've actually got a tracing already done on a board, and here it is, Blue Peter moment, one done earlier. Just going to use my softer 8B pencil, just so that you can see how much of that image I've actually got. Let me just get the original here. And you can see that basically all I need now is to tidy up the tracing a little bit, give myself a little bit more definition. And I quite like just putting a few lines down, almost as a shading. He's got a bit of a bump on his head here, so around that bump I'm just going to shade it a bit with the pencil. Of course, the graphite will mix with the paint later on when I start painting it. So I need to give him a little bit of hair at the top here. Just a few directional strokes so that I know the direction I need to use my paintbrush. And I've used trace down for years and years and years. I do love drawing, but sometimes you just want to get on with the painting, and trace down's a very good option. And that'll do. I don't want very much more than that. Now, the paint that I'm going to use is the Rowney System 3, and I've bought an artist's gift set, and the reason for this is because you've actually got 6 different colors, you've got a lovely set of brushes, and you've also got the acrylic paper. So with Christmas coming up, this is rather super set to start new artists off on. And I'm going to use the burnt umber to paint with. And acrylics are quite amazing. They've come on an awful lot since the 70s when I started using them. You can use them very, very diluted and work with them as if they're watercolor. But you can also use a knife and get a very, very thick impasto effect. And if you do use your knife to paint with, it doesn't shrink back as much as you would imagine. But today I'm going to be using a lot of water. This is a chisel angle shaper, and I'm just going to dilute the color and make sure I don't have any lumps and bumps in it. Lots and lots of water, and start painting. I'm going to go straight in and do his eyes. I've missed that pesky photograph, has gone for a walk. Here it is. I like working with acrylics for one or two reasons. First of all, they dry very, very quickly. Now that can be quite frustrating, but in this instance, I wanted to dry as an undercoat and then start doing some texture on top. And I'm going to be showing you how to use the Rowney texture paste later on. But for the moment, I want you just to see that I use my brush in little circles to try and give you quite a soft skin effect. And then using this very chiseled edge, I can pull it and really build up the detail. The eyes are in shadows, so I'm just going to take my time to put one even tone of color down. So straight away, just the same tone of color is going to go down. I'm using the burnt umber and just building up very quickly some of the shadowing. So it's a bit like using a pencil and shading with a pencil. No difference, you're just using paint. And then as soon as those layers are dry, I can come back in and add more paint to it. I'm looking forward to doing these hands. That's going to be, for me, the most interesting part. And I don't know if you can see, I'm using my brush to almost paint the negative space. So the negative space is leaving the object that you're painting, these white hairs on the end of his chin white, and then I'm picking up the color underneath and putting the underneath into a bit of shadow so that it creates a bit of texture. Right. This would take me quite a long time to paint, so in true Blue Peter fashion, I've got one that I've already painted on ahead. And here he is. I've also enlarged the photograph so that I can see the detail a little bit more. And I'm folding back the white surrounds so that I can actually see more and more detail. And this time I've got an even tone of color all the way across his face. And I'm going to hunt out the really dark areas, which for me is in the ears. Little touch of blue will darken your brown. So brown is made from red, yellow, and blue. Obviously, you can make your own colors. And I'm just going to add a little bit of blue to it and then go back in and just hunt out the very, very dark shapes and build on top and make it just a little bit more dramatic. So initially a quick wash of color, and now just taking it darker and darker, always dipping into the water and just controlling how much paint is on the brush. It's very much similar to watercolor painting, and that's the beauty of acrylics. You can use them just like watercolor. They're not as transparent, obviously. Putting a great big shadow across the eye sockets, because he's looking like he's meditating. And I'll just build on these colors as I go, letting them dry in between layers. So I do love painting wildlife, and I've got the original of this painting in an exhibition. It's in Thorsby Park. It's a beautiful park not far from Newark, and I was there yesterday handing it in for exhibitions, so I hope it does well. But if any of you want to see some terrific animal paintings, it's the Association of All Artists. But there's a terrific exhibition on here in the SAA, which is all the little miniatures And I believe they've got something like 32,000 miniatures on exhibition, which is an enormous exhibition. You've never seen so many different paintings painted. It's going on exhibition to Birmingham in a couple of weeks' time. So anyone in that area can go and have a look. Right, just going to get into these hands and just show you how I build them. With the hands, a lot of people end up with their hands looking like pork sausages. And the reason for it is they concentrate too much on the digits. With hands, it works best if you actually draw the gaps between the hands rather than concentrating on the actual fingers themselves. So when I look along this hand here, there's a gap between the two fingers, and I'm just going to really concentrate on painting the shape of the shadow between the two fingers. And there's these deep crevices. It's obviously quite an old chimpanzee. And now I can pull the paint and dry it and work with it almost as if it's watercolor. It's very, very watery. In fact, a couple of my students would call it dirty water. It is almost as if you're taking it straight out of your water jar. And just build it, and try and create some form, a little bit of dark and light on either side to build it up. Of course, if you make a mistake, all you do is lift it out while it's nice and wet. Or because you're in acrylics, really you can't make mistakes. You simply paint straight over. You take some white acrylic and paint it out. So no problem at all. Just mixing up my color, making it nice and thin and runny. A little bit of blue into the brown. Going to come back on these crevices here and just add a little bit more paint to them. Takes time to develop. You've just got to relax and enjoy it. Once again, using round brush strokes just to try and give a bit more texture to the hands. Like that. Come back in, take it darker. Just keep working one area at a time. Above the hands, I'm going to just darken this area here. Once again, going back in, building the color. Just using blue and burnt umber and a really terrific brush, the angle shader. It comes with a set of 3 brushes in the gift kit and a nice brush to work with. Right, here we go. Going back into the eyes. The eye area would have dried a little bit by now. And so I'm just going to go in. Oops, that's too dark. Lift it out. Take this side in a little darker as well. Blend, 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 blend. Going up onto his head. So, as if you were shading with a pencil, absolutely no different. You're using liquid paint, but it's so thin that even if you made a mistake, you could very easily just take white paint and paint straight over it. The hair is going to be terrific to do with this chisel. So I'm putting my little finger down and just doing some very directional strokes. I don't want him to look as if he's been electrocuted, so I'm going to group them and leave a little gap and then group some more and then just grab those edges and blend it in and then leave a big gap and come this side and start grouping the hair again, just like that, and then leave a gap. And the person who's viewing your painting will connect all these shapes. You don't have to put each and every single one in. You can just allow a little space. I've given him a bit of a blue eye, so that's a lovely problem to solve. And what I'm going to do is mix the paint a little bit thicker and then go in on top of that blue acrylic and just paint it with thick paint. So I'm covering up the mistake by just going back in and making his blue eye brown. Oh, I don't know, you might see a chimpanzee with one blue eye, one brown one. I must say I haven't had that experience yet, but possibly there's one out there. Just going to darken this area as well. I'm going to look at his forehead, and I might wet the surface exactly the same way that you do with watercolor, and then pick up some light, thin paint and just drop it into those very edges and give him a few worry lines. So he really is thinking hard. And by using the water, I'm just breaking it away from a flat surface and helping to create those textures. I'm going to pick up the paint again, a little bit of blue, come back down into the ear area. Oh, there's some very, very distinct hairs coming across his ears, wiping the paint off the brush, just blending a bit. Got to go below the ear and just add a little bit more color here. So I'm pulling out the darkest areas as I work. So layer 1 was putting a very light layer of color on, and now I'm just going into creating a few details. And I think this side of the face needs quite a bit of dark along here. So once again, using my brush to try and create the texture of the fur, and then picking up the ends and just blending it away so that you're getting that dark to light. When I come down onto his mouth, he's really got quite a lot of, I don't know, crisscross lines going across. He's probably sucking his cheeks in while he's thinking. So I'm going to try and describe that by just going across. And of course, if I don't like what I've done, I can always lift it off or put some white paint on it. Going back into the mouth. A little bit of shading around the mouth. Take it darker. I'm going to extend it. It's almost like he's smiling a little bit. Dilute the color down. And just build underneath the mouth and give us a bit of texture. Good. Now, a little bit of the hair. So once again, pulling the chisel brush at an angle like this. Joining up, you don't want it to look too much as if he's just put his fingers in a light bulb and got electrocuted. So we're going to just try and give him quite an interesting edge and then come back to these hands and have a look at the second hand, which is here. Once again, I'm going to go in and paint the gaps between the digits and just try and build the shape a little bit by pulling it. So from dark to light, almost like shading. As I've said before, with a pencil, you just happen to be using acrylic. The reason I'm doing this in acrylic is because I'm going to work in the background and put quite a bit of texture into the background, and I don't want the paint to move. So I could do it with watercolor and it would look lovely with all that wet into wet, but I'm definitely erring on the side of caution by using acrylic, because once it's dry, I can paint on top of it and the image will stay. So really just from a safety point of view and making sure that I end up with a painting that looks good. He's got some gorgeous knuckles. He's got a knuckle there. I'm just going to add some water to there and to there and paint around the water just like watercolor and allow the water to soften off the shading like that. Let that dry, and while it's drying, work on a few more fingers. We take this little digit here, take it really quite dark, goes behind this finger, and then in here you've got quite a few cracks and crevices. They've got amazing hands. I live in Dorset, where we've got Monkey World, which is a lovely place to go and visit. You get up really close. And actually, as a child, we had monkeys as pets, so I'm very fond of these animals. Now, behind the hand, I need to just take the paint really quite dark, just to show that hand up. So you've got dark against light. So I like to work from a black and white photograph, simply so that I can see the changes in all these tones. Get to use water and just move all that dark paint around. And then while it's still wet, I get to grab these edges and just take it into fur. Just use the brush to try and describe some of that fur, very dark in this area, thicker paint. Take it darker, darker, darker. We're going to be taking a short break so that the paint can dry, and show you a few little adverts, but then I'll be back to finish off my chimpanzee, and I will allow all this paint to dry in the meantime, and see you in a few minutes.
Let us bring out the artist in you. If you'd like to learn how to paint or improve your painting, the SAA, Society for All Artists, is here to inform, encourage and inspire you every step of the way. When you become an SAA member, you get so many benefits, including the free bi-monthly newsletter Paint, packed with inspiring step-by-step projects, fascinating articles, and detailed information to get your creative juices flowing. Discounts on over 13,000 art products featured on the SAA website and in the Home Shop catalogue, with free order line and free delivery in the UK mainland. A devoted SAA team on hand to answer your questions and give you the confidence and motivation you need to start painting and develop at a pace that suits you. Plus, a free welcome pack filled with gifts and practical help to get you started, as well as the opportunity to make friends with like-minded people.
Best thing of being a member is the inspiration from the magazines, to be able to purchase things at a very reasonable price.
Yeah, you get the reduction on all the materials, the advice you get.
I can shop from home.
It's a community.
It seemed like a very friendly sort of organisation.
If somebody's thinking of joining, don't spend too long thinking. Just join. They'll love it.
And we're back.
Hi, we're back. I've taken the painting of the chimpanzee as far as I'd like to at this stage, and I'm now looking at the background and wondering what I can do with the background. And one of the products I'm very fond of is the Rowney texture paste. Many years ago, I was out promoting this product, and I must say I still think it's absolutely terrific. I want to show you what you can do with it, and because it's much easier to see what you can do with it on a black piece of paper, I'm going to work on the Frisk black pad. And it's a way of creating texture. So I'm going to use a size 13 palette knife, and if you can imagine, you're doing a building and you want all those plastered, that falling off plaster effect. If you drag your brush very, very slowly, you start to get that beautiful, you know, if you go to Italy, you see a lot of the buildings there have got the plaster falling off, especially good for Venice, if anyone's painting Venice. But what I like doing with it is putting it down and then pushing it and squashing it, pushing it and squashing it, and playing with it. And I've done a lot of flower painting using this product. And you can't work with it while it's wet. You've actually got to wait until it's bone dry, and then you can paint on top of it. So here's some elephants that I was working on a couple of days ago, and you can see from that all I've done is actually done a quick drawing and put the paste on, and now that it's bone dry, and you've got to scratch it. It takes about an hour to dry. It all depends how thick or how thin you put the paste on. But once it's dry, you can then pick up your color and start painting. And I'm very fond of putting watercolor on top of the paste. You can put acrylics. It's not very good with pastels, but definitely oils can go on top. And the beauty of it is you just wet the paste, and then once again, drop your colors in. And the colors run into all the little cracks and crevices that you've created. And you get some really beautiful effects. But we're not here to paint elephants today, so it's just to show you how the texture paste works. But you can see how it's going into all these little edges and really does give you rather a super effect. So I'll let that one dry. And what I'm going to do now is work on the painting that I was doing earlier on. And just put some texture paste on. And I thought I'd set the chimpanzee into a cave. And by using this paste, I can create all sorts of interesting shapes. So the idea is to actually put the paste on top of and around the chimp. And I'm loading up quite a good dollop. That's a very technical word. Nice little dollop. And I'm going to put it down like that. Now, a lot of people have a problem working with a painting knife. You can drag it with a brush. It's no problem. You can drag it with a brush. It is water soluble, comes off, takes half an hour or more to dry. Depends how thick you've put it on, but I've put a big dollop on like that, and pressing quite hard, I want a sort of broken effect. Very slowly, I'm going to take the paint off up there a little and bring it this side. And then what I'm hoping to achieve is that it starts to look like a rock face. So that my chimp is sitting in a cave somewhere thinking these big thoughts about whatever chimps think about. Don't know. Fruit, I should imagine. Mangoes, I seem to remember, seem to be a very popular thing. Of course, bananas, you know. Don't know a single monkey that doesn't like a banana. We brought up 3 monkeys when I was a kid. They were great fun. We used to dress them in our dolls' clothes and carry them around. But look at that, it's just breaking beautifully. And here's the thing, if you make a mistake, you can just whip it straight off, put it back into your pot, load it up again, and I'm just loading a little bit at a time, and then coming back and working on top of this surface. Don't know if you can hear the noise. You do want it to break like that. A little goes a long way. You're not going to use an awful lot of paste. You can also use gels, of course, and drip gels all over it and create some quite exciting effects. Great. That's got to dry. Going to take about 20 minutes to an hour. I test it. If I touch it and it's still a little bit soft, I leave it alone. When it's bone dry, it's the best. So here's what I've done earlier. I think Blue Peter would be proud of me. And now I'm going to use a few more colors. So moving away from actually the painting of the chimp, I'm going to introduce a little bit of green, a little bit of yellow. These are all part of the gift kit. And I'm working on a disposable palette, the Rowney disposable palette. And I'm going to mix a few colors together and then wet the paste. So I don't know if you can see or if you can hear, this paste is bone dry, which is where you want it to be. And picking up some of these colors, a little bit of the green. It's quite a bright green, but of course if you add a little red to it, it knocks the green back and makes it a more controllable color. Get to add some yellow to it, add a bit of brown. So really watering down the paints tremendously. And I'm going to paint a cave. He's going to be inside a cave. And you'd never think you'd need a purple, but I think I probably will. So I'm trying to get it really very, very watery. Maybe a little bit more of that yellow. Pulling the yellow back and out. Taking the green over this way. Making a little puddle of brown over there, which I can blend into the red just to warm it up. What I don't want to do is when I'm doing a wash is actually run out of color. So I'm going to mix lots. I'm going to mix far more than I think I will need rather than run out of color and panic in the middle of it all. So no panicking allowed, lots of color. Maybe a little bit more of that yellow just to be on the safe side. Great. Now, going to use a big brush. This is a large oval wash brush. And I'm going to start over here and put a lot of water on, like that. I'm not going to wet the whole painting. I'm going to roll the brush into the yellow, bring it down, pick up the red, which is a browny colour. And I don't know if you can see that as I paint over the shapes, you can tilt it as well if you want to, you're starting to get this rather atmospheric effect. I'm going to drop a little green in here and there, which is quite nice. So it's working very much like watercolour, wet into wet. This is acrylic paint. I can paint on top of him, he's not going to move. And that's why I've painted him in acrylic. So I can paint right down onto the chimp's face. And what I'll do later on, I'm sure a lot of you are panicking about me painting out the chimp's face. I can feel the pressure. I'm going to tissue off. Oh, I picked up a big dollop of red. And so I'm going to knock it into a purple. And it's quite good to make a mistake. I've got to show you how I fix my mistakes. I don't particularly want the red in my cave. So I'm going to loosen off the colour and touch down and just lift it straight off. So no panicking. I'm going to pick up lots more yellow, a little bit of brown, and that's better. That dollop of red didn't work at all. I always darken the edges of my paintings, so down here I'm going to bring a little purple in. And the idea of that is to bring your eye into the center. So down at the base here, the colors are going to go much, much darker, probably less water. This is a terrific brush. It's carrying a lot of pigment without running dry. And so the idea is that he's peeking through all the foliage that's hanging down from his cave. And now I'm going to tissue off my brush and go back and lift off where I want some of the actual texture paste to show through, so that we've got darks and lights showing. I like that little curve, so I could tissue off with the kitchen towel, but I find it takes too much paint, and then I've got to go back in and just touch up. So by rolling my brush onto the towel and drying it, you've got far more control. I'm just loving these textures. But once again, we do want some lights, we do want some darks. And now that I've lifted these all off, I'm going to change brushes, and I'm going to pick up a little brush that has no name on it, unfortunately, but I'm sure we'll find the name. It's one of a set. I'm using a very dark brown now. I'm going to go back in, and where this break in the shape is, I'm going to just drop a little bit of colour, and because it's working like watercolour, putting these very dark shapes in is all going to diffuse and run into each other and look beautiful. And the idea is that he's sitting in his little cave, looking out on the world and thinking big thoughts. So the purple's running into the green, and I quite like that. And over here we might just drop a little bit of that green in as well, just to give us a change of tone. Run it up, run it down. It's a little dry patch here, which I'm just going to wet. And using my yellow, go in underneath and just, the idea is that he's glimpsing through all these stalactites and stalagmites, or I don't know what they are. It's putting the background of the painting in front of the monkey. He's not a monkey, he's a chimp. Do you know what I mean? Darkening this edge. Mixing the blue into the burnt umber gives you a very, very nice dark tone. And then just painting around the shape. Because initially when you're painting in the blind, you can't really see what's going on. Dropping a little more depth of tone down here. And here's the beauty about acrylics. What you see is what you get. It's not going to dry 2 tones lighter. The colours are going to be more or less the same as the ones that I'm putting down. I think a little bit more green up there. Get the green on the brush. I don't know if you can see how watery I'm using this colour. So it's using it just as if it's watercolour. And of course you can always, once it's dry, go back in, add a bit more darks here and there. But I hope he's looking quite moody, thinking his big monkey thoughts. A little bit of blue, still very, very wet. And that's the thing about working on canvas. It stays wet long enough for you to be able to manipulate it. And when it's dry, I can go back in, I can lift out. I had to just lift out his forehead a little bit like that so you can see it peeking through. A little bit of his nose, a little bit of his mouth. Put a few lines here and there. Going to keep the hands quite in focus. Might wet them a little bit, not too much. It is all about his hands. And there we are. There's my meditating chimp, and I hope you've enjoyed watching me paint it. It's got to dry, obviously. When it's dry, I can go back in and do a little bit of tweaking here and there. But the beauty of working acrylics, you can work with them very, very thick, or like watercolour, you can dilute them right down. So thank you for joining me. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Vic Bearcroft. I've created my half of the postcard and now I'm going to pass it on to my painting partner.
What have you got for me, Vic? Half a skull. What are you trying to say to me, Vic? Are you calling me an old fossil? Okay, let's see what we can do with it.